I know how it can be when you're first looking at the screen. You're like, what is all of this? And trust me, when I first started out, I was the same way. I'm like, this is confusing. I don't know. Welcome back, guys. I am Nisha from Nisha's View. I'm the Nisha in that. And today we're going to talk about flash or speedlights. Now, when you're thinking about speedlights, oftentimes you think about it being difficult to learn, but we're going to cover the basics, the bare basics for you to get that extra light, that extra pop for your photos, so they can look really good when light is added, when you add a little bit more light. And it's not the light that's on your camera. Sometimes your crop sensor cameras have this pop-up flash. And the pop-up flash is okay, but sometimes it can be really harsh. So today we're going to talk about adding a little bit more light using a speed light. All right, so stay tuned. Okay, so first things first is that before you go out and get you a speed light, you have to remember that these the speed lights are family specific. If you've been following along this series of beginner photography tips and questions that you need to ask yourself, then you know that you have already joined a family or a brand. Okay, so speed lights, most of the speed lights that I know of, they are brand specific. That means that it will only work with certain brands. Now, as you know, I'm a Canon girl, so you have to make sure that whatever speed light or any other artificial light that you're going to be adding is compatible with your camera. And this is a Godox V862 version 2, and I like Godox products. Some people don't, it's pretty good to me. I like it, and the light that it throws is really good. So I definitely recommend Godox. They're fairly inexpensive. You just have to do your research on it, okay? And this is an older model too. I think they have like a V1 now that's round. So, but definitely if you're getting started, make sure, that's the first thing I'm gonna tell you, make sure that your light is compatible with your camera. So they're brand specific, all right? So, moving on, let's get into it, okay? Now the screen on this thing can be a little bit intimidating. And sometimes, there's some buttons here, there's a lot of buttons here, a lot going on. See, my phone dings every time I start recording. Never fails. But anyway, so the screen on here has a lot of buttons, okay? A lot of buttons. That's just, and it may look intimidating, but I'm gonna make it real simple for you. I'm going to go through it. It's gonna be real basic, and you're gonna be, working on your speed light and your light game real quick. All right, so let's get into the buttons on this. Okay, so we're gonna cycle through the modes, which is this button right here. I'm just pressing this button to change your mode. And the first mode here is called ETTL. Now this is basically an auto button. It will automatically set all your settings for you and you won't have to worry about it. But if you're doing events, then it sets all of the settings for you and you don't have to worry about manually changing anything. Okay, and the next mode is manual, which is my favorite mode because it allows me to control everything on the screen here. It allows me to control how much power that I'm going to let out in the flash, and yeah, it controls all of if I have additional flashes, in which group that they need to be in. Okay, and next is multi. I'm not real familiar with it because I've never used it, honestly, But I know I've read that it is when you want to take multiple flashes or capture movement. So you're going to have different movements in the shot. So it'll create like almost like a dragging effect of blurriness or motion in your picture. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with it, so you can try it at your own risk. All right, so we're going to go back to the manual mode because this is the mode that I am most familiar with and the one that I use all the time. Okay, so we're going to go through these buttons down here, which is the ZM stands for zoom, which is this zoom up here. And with this, you want to make sure that whatever lens you're using on your camera, that your zoom matches it. So here you can cycle through, and here is just a dial that you can change. It's changing up here. As you move it, it changes. So whatever lens you're shooting with, then that's what you want to keep your zoom at. And what it actually does, it just lets out the light. So how much light is spread, so that helps with the zoom. So in the group, if you have, like I said before, if you have multiple flashes, then you can assign each flash to a different group. So here you can assign a certain power, flash power, to group A. You can assign it to, let's click it now. So group A can be assigned to that power. Then if you move your wheel, it just changes the amount of the power. Now remember, if you watch my other videos on this beginner series, then you know I always say low, mo. Lower the number, the more light you're gonna let in. Same thing goes here. So 1/8 of a power, 1/4, 1/1 is like full power. You're letting in a lot of light, right? Or your flash is going to give off a lot of light. But the downside to using 1/1 is the recycle time of the flash. So the higher power that you have it on, it may not flash because it needs time to recycle through your flash to create the flash. So I always keep my number. I start off at 1/32. 1/32 is pretty good setting, because what you want to do before you even start using your flash is make sure that your camera settings are set. I would normally have a higher f-stop when I'm shooting and using artificial light. I usually go with a higher f-stop because I want a lot of stuff in focus, right? I want my subjects to be in focus. And so I normally fix my settings on my camera. I fix the settings on my camera first. So I set my exposure in camera first, and then I add light. I start off with 132 power, okay? And then if it's still not enough light, or my subjects aren't lit up like I want them to be, then I just turn the dial. So I turn this dial, and you can see it's moving your flash power. My suggestion, if you're just starting out, is to not go below 1/8 of a power. Try to keep it between 132, 116, 1/8 of a power. All right, and now you can start off at 164 depending on the amount of light you already have in your scene. So, but for me, if I'm doing portraits, even if I'm outside or in a, like an event or something like that, then I always start with 132 and then increase from there. Next up, we're going to talk about the channels. Now, channels here, it just means that if you're in a setting, let's say you're doing an event and there are other photographers at the event, then you want to make sure that you're not interfering with their flash, with their transmitters. So I normally, if I'm by myself and I know no one else is going to be there, then I just keep the channel here at channel 1. But like I said, if you're somewhere where there are other photographers, then you could probably, switch it to whatever channel that they're not using. So it'd be good to ask them, what channel are you on? So I can set my channel to another channel. So next up is the bounce card. Allows you to bounce the light once you do your flash. So let's say your flash is going off. This allows the light to bounce off of this card and hit your subject. Now, very important, very, very important that you do not point this light directly at your people, or whatever you're doing, but mostly people, right? So you don't want to point this directly at them when you're taking a photo. I usually point the light up toward the ceiling or anything that has like a light reflective surface. So if you have white walls or white ceiling, then this will be good. So because the light is going to hit it and bounce the light from the ceiling or the wall and back onto your subject. But this one here, it just lets you bounce the light. That's what that card is for. So that's basically it for this is like I said, it's a crash course in learning the flash. Okay, so that was it. That was all it is to it. And you're on your way to becoming a lighting master. But no, this is, I was just wanting to do something quick. If you're a beginner, and I know how intimidating sometimes the screen can be on these flashes, and then, we're not going to get into the other, off-camera flash equipment. But this was just really quick, something to get your feet wet into the lighting, artificial lighting, off-camera flash. They call it OCF, off-camera flash. So I didn't want to make it, too technical, because I know, like I said, I know how it can be when you're first looking at the screen. You're like, what is all of this? And trust me, when I first started out, I was the same way. I'm like, this is confusing. I don't know. But I kept playing with it and kept, testing it. So that's what you have to do. You have to practice. You have to take your time. So it goes back to what I was saying in my first video. You have to understand what it is that you're going to photograph, like your purpose. Then you have to fix a budget, because yes, lighting can get very expensive, and depending on the brand, again, you have to know your family. What family are you going into? But depending on the brand of lighting that you get, it can get expensive. But you do get what you pay for with lighting. And I've done some good shoots with Godox. So I'm trusted with Godox. Again, this is not sponsored by Godox. It's not sponsored by anybody. It's sponsored by me and my clients and what we've used to get their photos to look good. So again, it's a crash course, and you go back to your founding principles of one, your purpose, your budget, and your brand, your family. What family are you going into? Those are very key, again, to keep in mind. And then that bonus one is to take your time and do your research. That all comes back full circle, right? It does. So that's it. That's all I have for today in lighting basics, using a speed light in 5 minutes. But anyway, it's good advice to just really practice, and you will get better. You will get better at it, and it'll make more sense, and it'll start to click and come together the more you do it. So that's all I have for today, and I thank you guys for always tuning in with me. Come back next week, where I will be sharing my favorite go-to lens for portrait photography. Guys, like, share, comment, do all of that, subscribe, and until next time.